Chapter 1. Sister. I was at my house having to take care of my sister because of an accident. She ran into the woods and got hurt one night, and I found her at my door all bandaged up. I could barely recognize her. I took her in and gave her food. I let her stay till she got better. Later that night, I heard pounding, muffled groans and screams, all coming from the basement. Since I had to be a man, I went to go check. When I got down there were no sounds. I thought I was hallucinating until I saw my sister in the corner crying. I came over to go see what was wrong. I put my hand on her shoulder. The crying stopped. I could hear the cracking of her neck as her head slowly turned to me. At that moment, I realized it was not my sister, and it started laughing. The laughter was distorted. I started to feel dizzy, so I tried my best to get back to the basement stairs. Once I did, I stumbled up the stairs and then ran to the front door. When I got there, I tried opening it, but it wouldn't budge, so since I heard the basement stairs creaking, I ran to my bedroom. I barricaded my door and hid under my blanket. All of a sudden, something started pounding on my door. It would say, in a distorted, breathless voice, "Let me in." I sat there in horror when it started banging against my door, harder till finally its head broke through. Its jaw was hanging open like it wasn't attached. Its face stretched and made a horrible screeching sound. I jumped out the window since it was only a few feet away from the ground. I then ran as fast as I could to the forest, never looking back. I'm sitting behind a tree and I keep hearing the cries of animals and bones crunching. I can hear something else and it's getting closer. It sounds like it's right behind. Chapter 2. The Fire. Switches to a news station. Well, you have it there, folks. That was a book found next to a dead body and multiple dead animals in the woods by Deadwood Creek. The police are urging people to lock their doors, as the killer is still on the loose. Let's hope the police find this killer soon. This was your local news signing off. Switches to a family of 4. They're probably just lying. The news does that a lot. I hope so, Luna says. Well, I'm gonna go to bed now. Don't let the news fill your head with stuff. Yeah, Luna says. I say goodnight, and I go off to bed. Later that night, I wake up to the sounds of screams. I rush out of my room and see my parents also wondering what all the noise is. Since we don't see Luna anywhere, we go to her room. When we enter, she is nowhere to be seen. At this point, the screaming stopped, and when we left her room, we saw the basement door open. We all go down the basement stairs, and in the far corner where the lights began to dim, we see Luna crying there. We rush over and try to talk to her, but she won't say anything that happened. We go up the stairs, and Luna goes to her room, and we all go back to ours. The next day, our parents go to the store, and it's just me and Luna. I thought she would talk to me about what happened. I went around the house looking for her. I didn't see her, so I went to her room. I didn't see her there, but in the corner of my eye, I saw a few cassettes, and I noticed she now had a cassette player. I put a cassette into the player, and it's a black screen with a kind of distorted voice giving instructions to do horrific things to people. I got a weird feeling and looked out a window to see a figure behind a tree watching me. I ran to my room, locked my window and door, then I called my parents. I told them what happened, and then I waited in my room for my parents to get home. I ended up falling asleep while I waited. When I opened my eyes, it was nighttime. I got up to open my door when I felt something grab my leg. I jumped and got pulled under. I woke up sitting against my door and looked around. Everything was back to normal. I opened my door, still looking around the floor, hoping not to get grabbed. I walked out and saw my parents in the kitchen. I walked over and started telling them about what I saw and found. They decided to call the police station about the stalker. When the police came, they started searching in and out of the house. They found weird drawings in the basement as well as on the tree outside. On the tree, there was a figure looking through a window, and in the basement, in the corner where my sister was found, was a house on fire. Later, when the police left us, my parents found my sister and we tried to talk to her, but she looked off and she gave me a weird feeling. Me and my parents left the room. They sighed and went to bed. Now I was too scared to sleep anymore, so I locked my window and door. I barricaded myself in my room. Later that night I heard banging and muffled talking in my sister's room. I was not having it tonight, so I just stayed in bed. Eventually, I fell asleep. The next day, I didn't feel right. I felt like something was inside of me, like it was trying to crawl out of me. I went to the bathroom and tried to drink some water, but that just made it worse. It was crawling out of me. I threw up a bunch of black gunk. I almost passed out when I saw it. I ran out of the bathroom and told my parents. Me and my parents went to the hospital, leaving my sister home alone. Once we got to the hospital, the doctors couldn't find anything wrong with me, so we just went home. When we got home, the house was on fire. My parents ran inside looking for my sister. They never came back out. The last thing I heard from them were their horrific screams as they burned. At least I thought. When the fire department came, they went and found my parents' bodies. It was horrific. Their bodies were mutilated. Their intestines were hanging on the walls. My sister was never found. They say she must have ran when the fire started, but I think something took her. I was at my grandparents' house when we got a call that my sister was found and she was at the station. We went to the station to go see her. When we got there, she looked normal again. Luna was finally acting like herself again. We all went to our grandparents' house and everything was somewhat back to normal. Chapter 3. Back to Deadwood. Many years later, Luna moved back to Deadwood Road with her husband. Luna was weary about moving back, but her husband reassured her that it was all in the past. The thing has not been seen since Luna was last here. Luna and her husband were not the only ones moving here. Luna also had a baby on the way. Luna and her husband moved into their new house and unpacked their stuff. The next 2 weeks, everything was normal. Nothing weird happened. After those 2 weeks, Luna felt safe and used to her house. Until one night she had a weird feeling like she was being watched. She looked around the whole house, yet there was nothing. When she went to sleep that night and had a nightmare, she was watching herself getting thrown against the walls, blood on the walls, and her husband getting killed by a thing. Luna woke up crying. She woke up her husband, and he told her it was just a nightmare, but Luna could not calm back down. The next day, Luna always felt something watching her. Sometimes she would see something in the corner of her eye, but when she would turn around, there would be nothing. The next few days, Luna grew sick and sicker. She would not sleep because of how paranoid she was. As she grew sicker, the weaker she became. One night, while Luna was walking around, she heard whispers. She then saw something through the glass door calling to her from behind a tree. Its bony limbs motioned for her to follow along. Since Luna was weak, her guard was let down and let the whispers in. She started to go towards the thing in the woods. When her husband shook her out of it, Luna's husband grabbed a rifle and shot the creature. It ran back into the woods. Luna knew she had to call her brother. She knew this had to end soon or else it would be like her dream. When Luna called her brother, he told her he would be there in a day and a half. Luna knew she would have to prepare just in case it came back. Luna's husband started boarding up the house. Luna tried to help some, but she was weak with the baby and not sleeping. The next day, nothing happened, so Luna was able to get some sleep. The next night, Jackson, Luna's brother, was expected to arrive any time now. While Luna and her husband were waiting for him, they heard a sound in the backyard. They looked through a little hole, but didn't see anything outside. Next, there was a sound in the front yard, and soon there were sounds coming in every direction. Then all the boards started coming off all the windows and doors in seconds. Then it jumped right through a door and jumped on Luna's husband. It started slashing its claws at him. Luna tried to beat it off, but it wouldn't budge, and it threw her against the wall. It then ran back into the woods. Luna was in too much pain to move. All she could do was watch as her husband bled out to death. A group of 4 people come through the door. One of them was Jackson. He saw his sister crying in the corner just like all those years ago. He rushed to help her. She was in a lot of pain, but Jackson's friends picked her up and laid her on a nearby couch. Chapter 4. Jackson's Story. A few years after the incident, Jackson founded a group where people would stop things like the incident from happening to anyone. It was a group of 5, but one died while they were trying to kill a creature. They managed to kill a few, and soon they stopped seeing the creatures anywhere. Soon after, the group went their separate ways, But then Jackson got a call from his sister about what was happening. He knew he had to get his group back together, and luckily he had their numbers, so he didn't have to find them the hard way. Jackson needed to end the haunting on Deadwood Creek once and for all, so he called his old friends and they got a place to meet up. They went to some stores to stock up on supplies for the fight. Jackson and his friends were planning as they were driving in their van to Deadwood Creek. The more of the creatures they killed, the more they learned about them, so they put that knowledge to use. They had to find out if it was female or male, because if it was female, it could be making more in a nest somewhere in the creek. They would have to be more careful if it's a female, because if its younglings hatched, they would start attacking things and helping its mother kill things. Now if it's a male, then there is only one, and that would be much easier. They know the creatures are weaker to fire than bullets or melee weapons, so that's why they stocked up on propane and other things like that. But they did bring some guns and knives. After some time, they finally made it to Luna's house, and they found her on the floor crying. They saw the damage from the boards getting ripped off and the crack in the wall. Chapter 5. On the Attack. Jackson bandaged up Luna and helped her up. He gave her a bat for a cane so she could walk. They all decided to go to the forest to find the home of this creature. They then gathered backpacks full of supplies from the van. They then headed into the forest, locked and loaded. As they were walking through the forest, trying not to make a sound, one of the group members fell into a very deep hole and twisted his leg. They tried to help him out of the hole, but they couldn't get him out. He told them to leave him and just find the home, so they continued. A bit after, they heard an agonizing scream, reminding Jackson and Luna of what happened to their parents. The way their intestines hung from the wall like some Christmas decor. They started moving faster. They could only see in front of them. They stopped for a minute and realized another member was gone. It was only Luna, Jackson, and his friend left. Jackson and his friend picked up Luna and started running as fast as they could. They then found a cave with a boulder blocking the entrance. They moved the boulder and then entered. There it was, the nest. The younglings were crawling the walls. The mother was standing in a dark corner eating a body, and the other body was the one that fell in the hole. All the creatures stopped and turned toward the group. They started rushing toward them, but then Jackson took out a torch and lit it. The creatures grabbed the last friend and ran back into the darkness. Jackson took all of the big backpacks and pulled out propane tanks and pushed Luna out of the cave and closed it. Luna stepped back and boom, the cave crumbled down, killing everything inside. Chapter 6. Safe and Sound. After the explosion, Luna made it to the hospital for her injuries and told the police what happened. There were multiple dead bodies at the scene. Some were mutilated and some were burned. Luna stayed at a hotel while her house was getting fixed. While she was staying there, she still made sure to check outside the windows and in all the dark places before going to sleep. When she fell asleep, she heard a banging sound. She went out of her room and saw bodies everywhere. There were guts hanging on the walls like with her parents. There were blood trails leading down the hall. When she opened the elevator, it pounced at her, and she immediately woke up. She then realized it was just a nightmare, but she saw a handprint on her window. The end.